Look, bruh, all I'm doing is connecting the dots.
A work of art of the highest quality.
And what will you do with the big money?
But I guess I'll make a lot of money, so here I am.
Connect the dots, be clear.
But music was noise, and I thought art was bullshit.
I want to be an artist.
Oh.
I'm not a piece of art! Yes, bravo! I'm a peacock flying into a...
If money is all that you love, then that's what you'll receive.
It really was. It was a work of art.
It's not about money. It's about sending a message.
Hey, just look at that sky. It's a work of art. Ha, nature never knew colors like that.
A man can be an artist. And anything, food, whatever. It depends on how good he is at it. Creasy's art is dead. He's about to paint his masterpiece. It's a work of art.
Make that money, get paid.
Man, this is going to be a masterpiece.
Bothered to connect the dots.
This is an art gallery, my friend. And this is a piece of art.
Simply connecting the dots.
Yeah, well, money talks and bullshit walks, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's how much you know about art.
You could make a lot of money making movies like this.
You have to be a bit of a rebel to be an artist of any kind, I believe.
You're gonna make a lot of money, pal.
Only a highly suspicious paranoid cynic, or someone like me, with an eye for clues and patterns, could possibly connect the dots.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Connect the Dots. I'm your host, Justin Stillmaker, and it's the show where we dig into that fun topic of art and money. Oh, man, I really missed hearing that little opening credit scene we have. I've been missing that when I was gone for about a month here. Very happy to be back doing this show. So the topic I've been itching to talk about this whole time, because I feel like it happened almost immediately when we went on our little mini break here, was the writer's strike. There couldn't be anything more teed up for our show, Connect the Dots, to talk about than the writer's strike. It is a perfect example of artists and money fighting over who gets to be in power. And the writer's strike is long overdue. It's been going on over a month at this point. And let's see, what do I want to say about this? I feel so strongly that the writers need to do this, and I'm very excited that it looks like the actors are about to go on strike and join them. I know that it's going to go on a while. I've heard that a lot of the studios are waiting at least 100 days because they can break a lot of their big contracts they sign. Because again, this is all just about money, and really what it's about is that the streaming model, the business model, is broken, and they are trying to scapegoat the writers and the artists as the reason it broke. And they think if they make it cheaper, that the profits will return, that the writers will cave, and they'll be, they're going to blame everybody else. But the thing is streaming is turning out to be the new crypto. It doesn't really work. It's like TV needs ads. It needs a lot of the old structure. I love that streaming made things more attainable and introduced new voices. And by this demand for content, created this arms race where almost everyone was getting a chance to write on things. We got a lot of great material out of that. But I think the one thing that's becoming true is that wasn't financially viable. And it was also very clear to the people involved that it wasn't. And meanwhile, the studios are like, whatever. And now that they're like, oh, our profits are going down just a little bit. Well, it's these writers and actors and directors too. The DGA just signed an agreement that they might not strike, but it sounds like a lot of the directors are not happy with it. And one of the main topics that coming up is a topic we've talked about a few times on the show is AI and how that fits into the writing career of writers. And so many of the studios are just oh, AI is going to solve all our problems. We won't have to deal with these writers. We'll just let the AIs write themselves, or they'll hire writers to fix up the AI. And everyone goes is like, this can't stand. Like the whole system of how writing for television and film was kind of broken during the streaming era. Like you would be on a show for at least 6 months. You'd have a chance to learn your craft, work your way up. You'd work on set. And now they like to just do these small mini rooms that are cheaper. They only last 6 to 8 weeks and put the pressure back on the writer to always be looking for their next job and also not having a chance to go on to set. And it creates worse art, which I know, not necessarily factors into the thought of a studio boss at Netflix. But the strike is something that like one of the things streaming destroyed was residuals, where a show would air and air and air and you get more and more profit. Well, they just need new content. They don't care that you're rewatching the same things over and over, though that is being proven true. As many options we have on streaming, we're all just watching The Office and Friends and It's Sunny. And if I'm being honest about myself, Storage Wars, which me and my wife have watched constantly for the last week and a half. And these shows like paid well and allowed for a chance for residuals for people so they could actually stay working. And now like everything in capitalism, and particularly in America right now, I think the strike is really proving to be like the first wave, and like you're not going to break our back. And I think one of the things that's making this really work well about the strike is that the actors are about to do it too, because they already you can sense they're going to start using their likenesses and not paying for it. Because like I know I'm getting a little rambly here because this is a topic I care a lot about, but don't quite know where my angle on it is what was I going to say? With everyone striking, it's I think shining a light that like we're all under duress. We're all like kind of following a model that doesn't really work, and we need to push back no matter what level we're at. And just because, of course, it starts first with entertainment, because again, there's that thing I'm always obsessed with, that art and money. Art is always showing the way of how money is lying to you often. And one of the things I've been really excited about to see with the Writers Guild strike is that they're taking a little more of their cues from the Teamsters. The Teamsters like have created a picnic line in New York early on in the strike, so like a lot of shows got shut down. I think the studios were counting on showrunners who kind of exist in a no man's land between they're a writer on the show, but they're also a producer. So technically they could work on the show under the guise of a producer and rewrite things. And Netflix's biggest show, Stranger Things, the showrunner stepped up and said, no, we won't be doing that. And I just think this is a real tide is changing things moment. And it's just like so exciting to see how people are pushing back on it and like teaming together. And I just think like it's everything I kind of wanted to see is happening. And at the same time, we're also now like you're reading more and more articles about how the streaming model is broken and how like, oh, now that we're not making profits, all those unique voices, people of color, women, we should probably cut those shows. All those shows you love, like I was talking about earlier, like Friends and The Office, they're allowed to kind of find their footing, run for a lot of seasons. And now they have, this backlog of 8 to 10 years. Streaming actively cancels shows that are popular after 1 or 2 seasons because there's no residuals. They have to pay the creators more for each season, and they're just better off going, let's just cancel it after 2, or else we'll have to pay a lot of money. So they've lost that incentive from the creatives to stay on, because all they care about is the bottom line. They're using a lot of like how tech works, where it's like, well, if everyone just starts using it, then we can raise the cost and it'll work. But that's just not really how television works, and not how the Writers Guild. And it's all breaking. And while it's very scary, like in the business, and like I know people are worried, I think it's all going to lead to a better place for everything. And so when I saw that start happening a month ago, I couldn't have been more excited for this writer's strike to talk about it on the show with you. Not excited for my writers friends to be out of work, including myself, who's pre-WGA, but like has gone down to this, watch the strikes. I'm rooting for them. It's just kind of an amazing thing to see everyone kind of band together, because this is the fight. And so I don't know, I'm rooting for it. I hope the DGA the directors reject this deal. I hope the actors go on strike and we actually have a real force of studios to really come to the table. And I hope this starts to spread all over the place. So I at least got a little bit of my crazy thoughts out on the strike. Let me know if you feel some kind of different way about it. I would love, this is something that's going to come up a lot and want to chat about. I'm going to have people who can speak better on it coming up talking, but now I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to move on from the strike and kind of all the emotions of it. And I'm going to bring on my guest, my favorite part. I'm bringing on the film festival doctor herself, Rebekah Louisa Smith.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going well, thank you. Just sweltering over here in Texas, but we're in triple digits tomorrow, so I'm just prepared now. Got all the suntan lotion and.
So when it's that hot, do you just stay in the house, or you go out and just sign us? Because I like sweating. I like suffering a little bit in the heat. Or do you stay inside?
Well, sometimes I have to go because I like to do my walks, and I've just bought a house and I can walk there. It's a nice walk, nice, lovely 40-minute walk. But it's not that nice when you're sweating, I tell you. So I'm going to have to. I'll try and plan it. If you do it first thing in the morning or last thing at night, it might be a bit more bearable. But in the middle of the day, it's going to be scorching hot. So
I remember I used to work a lot of construction jobs, and we would always start very early, like 5, 6 a.m. because you're like, okay, if we get it done and beat the heat by like noon, because like the noon, the sun is at the highest, and you're just like sweating and just like it's the worst.
Like, oh, and trying to look presentable, like going to the event, like, hi, excuse me, I'm going to just like freshen up. But yeah, know exactly what you think.
Okay, so I feel I've been talking you up. So Rebekah has been I did a short film called The Rider, which I'm sure I've mentioned on the show, that I then hired and worked with Rebekah, the film festival doctor herself, to build my festival strategy. And how would you define your job as the film festival doctor? I feel like this is a unique job that needs an explanation.
Oh yeah, there's not many of us that do this.
No.
It's not like a producer or Southern, you see them all the time. It is very niche.
Yeah.
I'm a film festival consultant, so I help filmmakers get their films into festivals around the world. Tends to be people come to me the problem that being, I've made a film, what do I do with it? Or I've written a script, what do I do with it? Which festivals can I get into? And we help you solve that problem, like we did with The Rider, to put together a very streamlined and targeted strategy that contains the best types of festivals to submit to get the best chance of success. Because there's a tough market out there with festivals. It's very competitive. Loads of films get made. Even though people are on strike, loads of films still getting made. And, there's not enough room for every single film they want to screen at festivals.
And I think like if you're a filmmaker, an artist, or someone with a script, it is so difficult because you only really hear about the big ones, right? You hear about Sundance and South by Southwest and Telluride, and like, I'm sure there are people right now working on short films that will get into those. But if you're being realistic with your budget and the size and what your material's about, you're like, I probably shouldn't even bother submitting to those kind. And like, then you're just like, I have this. It's how I started reaching out, looking for someone like with your unique specialty, where I was just like, I have this kind of niche thing, and there's a billion festivals. Where are the ones that, like you're always worried, and like, it's so useful to have someone to kind of guide you through this. So how did you land in this job?
It was all kind of by accident. I mean, I was studying for my PhD in UK. I used to live in the UK, obviously I'm British, so I was in the UK for a long time, grew up there. And then I moved to the US at the end of 2021. And I was doing my PhD, and that was quite an isolating process. I'm proud of the PhD, but it's a very, solitary process, a lot of writing, a lot of researching. And a friend of mine worked at the theatre, because it's a university town. He said, I've been asked to put on by the Film Council of Wales a horror film festival, because there isn't a horror festival in Wales, and they think it's going to be good here because it's a student town, students of horror, and they want to fill that gap in Aberystwyth because we have the facility. And I was like, well, that sounds great. Do you want to help out? I was like, yeah, that sounds like a fun job. A bit of having distraction from writing every day.
Right, yeah.
And then that like hobby job was this massive wake-up call that this is what I am born to do. This is what I love doing. I love producing festivals. I love programming. And then when I spoke with filmmakers, I asked them what they liked and disliked about film festivals. And the same pattern was occurring, which I picked up on from my PhD training, was that they all loved film festivals. They'd go in there and, having fun, getting drunk, seeing the film on the big screen, winning awards, and just networking, and having a really good time. But what they hated was that there was nobody they could turn to help them get their films into festivals. They said, we're just going on, back in the day, it was called Without a Box, and seeing what happens, just go for the best, shut the money in, and we'll see. I was like, well, that's not a good strategy. That's like the failure that's like a recipe for success. Sorry, a recipe for failure, not success. And they were like, well, we'd like to have that at some point, but right now we're just, seeing what happens and throw it out there. I was like, this seems to be a common thing people are going through. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to change that. So me and my friend who came to the festival, Colin Arnold, he said, let's look on Google, because this is before Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook were a thing, and they were maybe starting coming out, but you wouldn't use them like we do now back in 2008, 2009. I looked on Google, and then I was like, oh, yes, there's someone else, but it's a very like, smaller kind of thing. There's one other person does it, which is a great guy called Film Festival Secrets. He's like got this book, and that was kind of all there was. And it's not a thing, and no one really knew about it. So I thought, right, I'm going to do it that model, and then make it a thing, become an established brand.
Yeah.
And at first, people were like, "Well, you're gonna have to work for free because no one knows what this is, and it's not a common thing, and people don't get it.
Right.
So you have to going to be prepared to do that and prove this works. If if you can't prove it, then it's not going to be successful." I was like, "Okay, so I'm going to prove this is going to work," and it did. So it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get it off the ground because I had no business skill or development. I mean, I knew kind of like I was organized, but business in depth I didn't know. I'd run a business before. Most entrepreneurs is like they have those skills and they then just set business up, but I was like going backwards, so it was quite a weird kind of like learning craft. But it got off the ground, and then when I moved to London in 2011, I set it up in 2010, moved to London in 2011. I did the PhD and then built it up and got my contacts up, and then went to festivals and then got to know programmers, and that then created my company and strengthened how we work. So the way that we create a strategy is that we base it upon the festival programmer's taste, what the festival likes, their audience, their themes, previous winners, and just knowing what they want is the basic kind of like backbone to create the strategy and getting it into the right kind of festivals. And that was all learned through many years of looking at programs, going to festivals, connecting, and building up each day the business.
That's I've been wanting to know how you got, because like one of the questions I wanted to ask you is like, did you ever actually make a film yourself? Have you ever did you go through that side of it as well? And like,
yeah, you know what, I have. So I didn't like producing. I prefer producing film festivals. I was good at it. I mean, I could do it, and we did a really good little short, which was a horror short for the festival, and we did it in London. I was still in Wales, but we did it in London, and it turned out really well. But I didn't like the process much of producing. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I can see where people get into, a lot of problems with those kind of things with producing. I don't mind a film, I don't mind a feature film. It's just like a 5-minute short. I was proud of it, but that was like, I was done. Other people asked me to produce at the time, but I said, I'm not feeling it. But I much prefer producing film festivals because that was, to me, that's where my passion was in the skill set. And programming was so much fun. Just it was different to it's like producing a movie, but it's just a different kind of energy and like end result. So I just love doing the producing festival.
And it's so interesting because like I think as a filmmaker, you're on the other side of like I made this movie and now it feels like I'm like you got everything together, you probably scraped your money, and now you're kind of faced with like the kind of little bit of the cold reality of business. Like, what do I do with this? And there becomes, I think there's resentment towards festivals from filmmakers, especially if you're not understanding it or getting in. And I think what people forget is that the people who program and create and run these festivals love movies more than anything. Like they are the acolyte for everybody. Like if there's like, they just want to be a part of something. And I think that like gets lost somehow.
Absolutely. I mean, Gaz Bailey, the festival director of Avatar Horror Festival, that was the name of the festival that I work for. He like knew horror inside out. So does Nia, who is now the producer with him. I mean, they all knew it so well. I mean, more than I did. I mean, I liked horror and I thought I was a fan, but when I saw them, I was like, wow, they know it inside out. They know exactly which guest to bring. They always brought Doug Bradley from, Hellraiser, and I recognized the name. I was like, oh, and he said, oh, that's from Hellraiser. I was like, oh, yes, I know. But, it's like they would just know it, inside out. Right. And it'd be incredible. So and that's how they knew how to program what people were looking for. They built the audience up because festival programmers love film and they know it. Like Tarantino, like encyclopedia kind of knowledge.
No, I agree. Yeah, like it's like your job is literally like kind of hand holding two people who should be best friends who have now like for a while have been like, well, you didn't accept my other short, so I don't like. There is this like I don't know. I feel like that sometimes there's this resentment, but like going through you, even with working through my own, was like really fascinating. Like you were just like you reminded me like these are programmers. This is what they're looking for. It has nothing to do with your film. It has to do with like you said, like their taste, their audience. Like it's so like which leads me like so. What's something? Well, first off, how many short films do you watch in a year or features? I mean, like that's.
So we get, in terms of short films, a couple come through a week. We can probably get maybe 5 or 6 a week of shorts. Features is not as much, but we do get them a couple of times a month. because they take either where we get attached early and we see the progress, or they just suddenly appear. It can vary. Probably per month, I'd say maybe we get maybe 4 or 5 of features, and then with shorts, it's a lot more. The problem I find mainly with shorts is that a lot of the time the sound mix is bad, which happens a lot, and that's a big thing with festival programmers, because they can pick up on that, because they know that inside out, that kind of part of the process. So I always, really encourage filmmakers to get that fixed or get it done, because it's going to really help you get into festivals if it is strong, because people pick up on it really easily. Festival programmers know inside out, the film, because some of them make films, they know what's got a good script, what's got a good sound mix, what's got a good, like lighting, etc., all those kind of things. So I see a lot. We see a lot, and a lot of them can be with short films, dramatic short. That's a very popular genre.
Yeah. So what's a mistake a lot of the sound thing I think is a universal thing, but what's a mistake a lot of people are doing when they're with their short films, when they're approached to festivals? Is there any one thing that you always wish you could tell everybody to stop?
I think the kind of key thing is debunking this myth, whereas people would always say your film needs to be exactly in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That isn't true, because sometimes films that are that length that come my way need to be shorter, or sometimes they need to be longer. So really it's a case of your short film needs to be the length it needs to be, whether that be 16, 17, 18, 20, 25, 30, 32, whatever it needs to be, it can get into festivals. It might not, any film that's a longer short is going to be a bit harder because it's longer for space.
Yeah.
But a short film that needs to be shorter will be relevant to festival programmers. And that can be the main common thing I find when a short is too long. I know that sounds weird saying a short film is too long, but when that is too long, it tends to be, it repeats itself. So it's the same thing with different words. So it's not developing the story, or there's too much dead air. That needs to be eliminated so it can then become the film it needs to be, and bring out the story more. Get the action quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons I actually started looking and reached out to you, is because I have a longer short. The writer is 17 minutes, and in my head when we were making, I was like, this isn't going to be longer than 11 minutes. And then I was like, oh no, I've reached this dead spot of length in my head of no one wants anything I should be 8 minutes longer or something. And immediately you were like, there's no perfect number. It's just
exactly. It needs to be the length it needs to be, whether that be 15 minutes or whether it be 14 or 10 or 9. Sometimes you just it needs to be that little bit shorter sometimes, just to really condense a story and not have any bits that drag, or the pacing goes up and down. There was a film that came through the other day which was a nice story and interesting to watch, but it was hard to keep up because there was too many flashbacks. They were trying to add all the depths of the story, too many flashbacks, but it interrupted the flow and the pace, which is kind of jarring. So you don't need to cram so much in if you think it will be important for the story. Just let it breathe and let it come out, and then get feedback on it from other people that aren't attached to you in the film is really important, because obviously a lot of people doing a short and a feature are very in depth in that world. With the writer is that was brilliant seeing that, because it has creates its own world, and it has the audience for it, different kinds of festivals, but it's still done really well and deserves to, and it's the right kind of length. It flows. It doesn't feel like it needs to be much shorter. There used to be a rule that everyone said that any short film can be shorter, but that's not always true. So a lot of people generalize at festivals, and it's important not to, when you hear those rumors, it doesn't apply to every festival is the key thing. But what I see is the mistake is doing this short that has to be 15 minutes or under, when it sometimes needs to be longer or shorter.
Yeah, it's so fat. Having you talk through that even with me, because we sort of landed at a point where we were at this longer length, but I had done a cut with the editor that we knocked it down to 11 minutes, and I was like, but I lost all the things that made it its uniqueness, right? So in the effort to make something that's more palpable, you might actually lose what made your thing interesting. And I think that is something that your process is really helpful in figuring out about your own movie. Do you work with people on the script level as well too, right? Even before they would go to make a short? Is that something you like to do? Yeah.
We love doing that, because I have in my team 2 of my girls are really good script readers, and one of them's she gives really in-depth notes to get it where it needs to be. She was it. See if it can cross the finish line, which I like that expression. There's good stuff in there, just need to flesh things out and develop it, etc. But yeah, she's brilliant at doing that. And I love her on board then because we can really get it in tip-top shape. Obviously, what we can't guarantee is that, even with a strong script, you have to obviously have strong execution. It doesn't mean that a strong screenplay can get to big festivals if it's not, got good sound or good acting, or it needs to be tightened up here and there. Those are things which really come into play with festival programmers. So what we can guarantee, though, is with a good script, you've got something really good here and lots of potential, and you can go far as long as you get the right cast, crew, and the right editor, because that's really important too. All those people need to be on the same page. The DP, the director, the cast, the editor, everyone in the sound. It needs to be put together, because otherwise, if it's not, it doesn't end up being the film it needs to be. So a script is the most important place to start. When that's strong, then build up the rest of the quality cast and crew to make it, reach its full potential that's on paper.
Well, and also I think having you talking to you early to build something for when it's done, because I think that's the problem. I know I suffered for years, where it's like, great, we finished it, we're kind of almost done in post, but having someone holding you accountable for all these things, like, what's your plan? Where's your festivals? Are you aiming for this? What are their deadline dates? Do you I think you almost become a de facto post supervisor, making sure that everything gets done and then figured out. And it's just we all want to do that, but there's that art. It's that art. This should be a part you're thinking of, because you're gonna get your best value out of your art. If you don't want to do something with it, don't make a movie. Paint. It's
exactly.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you. Okay, what's something you find frustrating about film festivals?
Well, I think the most frustrating thing can be notification dates.
You don't have to name names or anything.
No. This is one of those things where some festivals, because they're so busy, they don't always tell people on the day that they say, and it just gets some of my clients get really stressed by it. Like, for example, on the Film Freeway dashboard, it says notification dates approaching. And then sometimes festivals tell you before that date by email. Sometimes they tell you on the day, because that's how they work. Some of them tell you day after. Some of them tell you after the festival, after it's finished. So it gets filmmakers stressed. So I always like to tell the filmmakers that please don't take that to heart, because some festivals haven't got the time to always get things done back on time. It's an approximate notification date. Don't take it as the gospel truth. But that is a little frustrating, because it would be nice if every festival told everybody the day they say, but it's just not possible. It's one of those things you have to accept. So that's why I always just remember to clients of mine, just to say, look, that is not the gospel date. Just think of it as approximate. You might hear then, or maybe in a few weeks' time, but just don't keep looking at Film Freeway, because it'll drive you mad. So that's the kind of main thing. But I love an organized festival, because I'm super organized too. So I love that when we get a real detailed email that's a really friendly email with lots of information. That's a really good festival. To me, it's all detailed. When they're a little bit vague, or there's a translation issue, again, that's not too much of their fault, but that can sometimes be a bit frustrating. But there's all those things to take into account. But I just have to turn out when I'm in a rush and I'm doing something quickly, because I've got to jump in an Uber or somewhere, and it's a long email or it's a short email. I look at it later on when I've got less distractions, and just engage in it, and then just accept it and carry on from there.
It is fun. You can kind of tell the level of festival based on the intro email of when your film got into the festival. I was very quick, okay, you're just, and you understand too, because maybe it's their first year, or they're just they've scaled up, but that also means, and it's not like us filmmakers make it any easier. I know one of them, I sent my DCP in at the last cut. I'm because I had to get a new one because it wasn't as good as the last one. So I was, and it's it's again, you really are this bridge between two frustrated siblings who are family. It's
I love that. Yeah, it's because obviously sometimes is that people get busy, the festival gets busy, you get busy, people get busy, and it's just, I think the way to resolve it is what I'll say to my team, with it being, that's a really good thing to say, the bridge in between. It's we got festival, then we got filmmaker, and then it's me in the middle. It's the bridge, if you want to call that in a really nice way. Is we just love having our spreadsheets and getting one step ahead and getting super organized, because that way we can chase people up and drop them a text, drop them a WhatsApp, or drop an email just to check everything's on schedule and blah blah blah. We have a filmmaker now who's super busy and misses everything, but luckily no harm's been done, because we catch it quickly and then get everything organized. So
is okay. What do you prefer? If you had your what's your favorite? Do you like working with a young filmmaker who's made their first short that's really great, or do you kind of want explore the world of features, which creates a whole different what challenge do you love more? What makes you more excited?
I'd say probably, I think that they both excite me. Both of them excite me, but I do love working with a new filmmaker and just giving them that kind of nurturing onto the circuit and helping them, steer the wheel for them and help them understand this weird and magical world, and also to help with their mental health, because it is kind of if they're, I teach them to become detached from the film, because sometimes people can be very attached to it emotionally and not understand the world. And when I explain the context, sometimes then they're like, okay. So it's nice working with somebody from the very beginning and seeing them grow on the circuit and nurturing them is a real rewarding kind of opportunity to have to work with them.
Right.
With features too, it's great. I mean, we have a feature right now that did the circuit, and we connected the filmmaker with the sales agent and now got it on Hulu. So that's amazing to have that bridge again is a good thing, because it's done really well on Hulu. And that was through having a good cast and crew and a good film that interests them, but also just knowing who to work with and where to get it screened. It did Heartland, it did Open Bad African Film Festival, Open Night, it did quite a lot. So it had a good press, and then it had the appeal of the cast, and that was all really, really cool. So that's what I love doing too, is just connecting people and being like that.
I was gonna say, I think one of the things I have to say about Rebekah is you're just really great at connecting people. I've ended up working with other people that you've recommended or connected, or make sure to talk to this person at this festival. And I think that is learning that festivals aren't a gate; they're a living, breathing thing that you want to be a part of. And sometimes it can feel like you're why didn't they take my movie or what? But
exactly,
they have their own point of view, and the more you start to understand that, the more you actually start to understand oh, actually my film doesn't make any sense there. Of course they didn't accept it.
Exactly.
I wish, is there
sometimes a nope, sorry, a nope, this will get in, it's easy. There's other films that are going to be similar. Sometimes it can be like we're doing at Abattoir, a tossing a coin kind of thing. Oh, this film's great, but it's heads or tails, which one I'll get in. So
okay, last couple questions. So do you have any advice for filmmakers to handle rejection, or how do you handle rejection? Is there ever one where you're I thought for sure you were getting it, and you get mad for the movie?
So the way to handle rejection is, first of all, to not take it personally and to accept that rejection is part of the process. You're going to get rejected from festivals, and there's no film that gets into every single festival. It doesn't happen. The reasons are, many ones you can't guess, but the key thing is to not think about the why and think, right, okay, well, if they liked it, great. They didn't, but then just move on to the next one. And think, don't take it personally or get upset by it, because it's very unlikely they didn't like the film. It's more a case of finding somewhere to fit it, because there's so many submissions, and to think, oh, it's just me and everyone else got in but me is not the way to kind of approach it. It's just to think, okay, it's just one of those things. Move on. When I had film mind to get into festival, I thought we'd get into, I was asked them, what actually tell us why would be helpful, just so we have for the feedback. And they went, oh, there's nothing wrong with the film. It's just we're going to screen 3 features this year, not the usual 10.
Yeah.
So that was just one of those. You just never know. You can analyze it all you want, but the key thing is just to accept it's part of the process, move on, and don't start analyzing the why when you haven't got any information as to why it happened. So it's really important just to, not let it drag you down or get you stressed, and just think something else will come in at the right time. And also, it's important to let go, because you can't predict when everything will occur. So it could be in the beginning there's some no's. There's a yes, then some more yeses, and a no, then a yes. And they could all happen in the end. Yeah. So you just don't know when it all occurs and what the flow is going to be like. So the more that you let go of it, the less you look at Film Freeway, the better.
Yeah. No, I very much relate to you have to kind of depersonalize it. And at the same time, I remember there's a couple left that I'm just I really want this one, but knowing it's actually really great to have someone like Rebekah to dump your crazy onto, as I think as a filmmaker, be tell me why I probably won't get into this, because I think it's important to have those conversations, or if you live and die by a South by Southwest or something, or because I do find like filmmakers get really obsessed with these sort of bigger ones, but it's like that's a much bigger machine. And like one thing I think I sort of learned going through this process with you is seeing how there's lower, mid, and then high kind of festival. You would never put them in that, but you can you build your way up with programmers and festivals. And like talking to other filmmakers, like, oh, you're a medium fish. The big fish will kind of start to notice you, but you can't just like jump to the top. You have to kind of go through the ecosystem.
Exactly. No, completely. You really do. You really do. It's important to do that and go through the ecosystem because it's part of the system. And also, you're right. Is that it's not a case of you'll only get taken seriously by being at South by, Sundance, Camberlin, and Venice. Not at all. I mean, there's lots of other great festivals that other people love and people go to and sales agents go to, like other producers go to, well connected, that can help you get more connections. Festivals are a stepping stone. You never know who you're going to meet at a festival. You never know. So I mean, I used to go to the Cannes Film Festival a lot. All the time when I was in the UK, I go there a lot. But right now, as I can't travel right now because of my green card, but I don't do long haul to those kind of festivals anymore. My other colleagues do that in the UK that work with me. But I remember the first time I was there, I was building the business, and I spoke with a sales agency, and they didn't have any films to work on at the time, but we had a really good conversation. It was like 6 years later, they referred me to Ridley Scott's production company. And they were like, oh, you should talk to Rebekah because she just leaves a lasting impression, you network and build up connections, and it's the right energy match. So you never know what it leads to, who you're going to meet. So but having a narrow vision, like where's my next project? Where's my next producer? Just be open and like, what else could I get from this? What else could come my way? And be open to these amazing possibilities and just be open, like, see what's going to, it's a fun part. Like, who are going to meet? What's going to happen? It's so much fun. It's like, it's an adventure. Never know what the ending is, but bring it on. Not like I have to meet somebody today. Who do I have to talk to get to come into this festival? That's the wrong energy. It needs to be more balanced and just enjoy it and then enjoy the process.
Yeah, I think that's something it took me a long time to learn how to network, which is like not be like result oriented or worry about like, did I meet something important? Was there someone more important? It's just like, just make everyone have fun, and it will attract people to you. And that's how you meet people. You become friends, or like you might not become best friends with a networking event, but you never know with these things.
You never know. So you never know.
Okay, and my last question has nothing to do with film festivals, or maybe my last question is, what is it like transitioning from England to Dallas, Texas? Has that been weird? What's some of the things that you've like really found strange about moving here, or were you kind of already prepared?
Well, I was kind of prepared because I was kind of feeling disconnected from the UK for a while. Because I mean, I've been lived all my life. I was ready just to like grow and expand the business. I mean, it's well established in the UK and South Africa, and I wanted just to really be based here in the US because I really love the US a lot, and I just felt more connected here, and just to be able to be more like local and move over here and be able to base myself here permanently, then going back and forth. I was going back and forth to the US all the time, and it was very exhausting because it's a long journey. UK to LA is 11 hours, Dallas is 10 hours. So it's a journey. I was going to leave. I was going to move to LA actually, but it didn't work out because I had a lot of problems in immigration with my visa at the time. It was really bad. I didn't want to live in LA after that. So I knew Dallas really well, the Dallas Film Festival, and coming here for that. I knew the people there, but also liked the city a lot, and I found it more like homely and welcoming. It's a very American city compared to London, for one thing. But I get treated here really well because people are so friendly. They love my accents. I get loads of things free. I'm like, oh, this is kind of useful. It's quite nice. But also everyone's very approachable. It's a very friendly state. It's a very hospitable state. I just felt really welcome here, and I built up a really good connections when I moved here, and I love being part of the industry here and just having this base, and I can travel easily to anywhere in the US from here. This is a very good location, Dallas Fort Worth Airport and Love Fields. So it didn't take too long to transition really. The only thing that took time was that I had a lot of PTSD from what happened when I got detained and had these visa problems. It was very, very difficult for the body to catch up. So I had a lot of difficulty with that part, which is adjusting my body and being safe again in the US after what happened. But that's getting better by the day. It's challenges all the time, but it's certainly improving what it was. Just I can't, like festivals, I can't just yeah, I just don't know how long it's going to take or what's going to happen. But it's getting better.
Okay.
And it was really good being here because I've got a great network of support through for health practitioners and also friends and that kind of thing. So it's really nice. I think if I was in LA, I wouldn't be able to cope because it was a bit too much at that point. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love LA, but
come and visit, obviously. No, I mean, you actually hit on the real, like, I, as someone who moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and listen, I love Los Angeles, but the only time I really dislike Los Angeles is when I'm like, New York is how many hours on the plane? Like everything, like it gets an extra hour and a half on it in a way, and you lose, like it's lose 3 hours. Where like
the 3 hour difference is a massive one. I mean, when I go to LA from here, we're just 2 hours in front of you. Yeah. New York's 3 extra hour, and then when I go to New York, I have to rush because it's an hour ahead of us. So it's I know what you mean. It's crazy.
Yeah, like I've made that New York flight, and like you catch even an early morning one, you're like landing, and by the time you're at where you need to be, it's like 4 p.m. You're like, how did
I know? You're like, oh my god, there's such a jump, and it's even worse with Hawaii. But I mean, but either way, it's like doing that every time. You're like,
but then you're in Hawaii.
You're in Hawaii, so you've got time to chill. But yeah, it's a lot different. So
well, Rebekah, thank you for taking time to speak with me. I would love to have you on again and just talk more about film festivals and shorts. And honestly, if you have a short or looking to, we all have our information. You really should reach out.
Thank you. It's been great chatting. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Now we're on to my favorite secretly outside of the guest subgenre of the week. Let's see if I remember how to do this. So in the honor of looking back in the past and summers of like time of blockbusters and big IP is still a phrase even with the writer's strike going on that you hear all about, I want to talk about some original IP, the 90s teen literary adaptation trend. If you lived through the 90s or just love teen movies, there was a wave in the 90s of movies based on a couple 100-year-old novels or more than that. And it's absolutely because some studio executive was like, we got these free books we can use. And so it led to some of the best movies you could ever hope for. So like first up, honestly, one of the best movies of the 90s, Clueless. Like it is absolutely an adaptation like of Jane Austen's Emma, but they've turned it on their head. This is, I think, also what helps kind of kickstart this wave, right? So you have Alicia Silverstone giving like what to me is like should have been an Oscar nominated performance. It's the fact that like we can't even see how great something is at the moment. It took 20-30 years for people to go like, kind of one of the best movies of the 90s is Clueless. Like it sums it up. It sums up a generation. Like if you were going, what's the best movies of the 90s? It's going to be in the top 10. It's like a movie that's endlessly rewatchable. It uses its source material really well. It's a great adaptation of Emma. Not to mention, it's a costume drama because I think the clothing in this movie is fantastic. And it's just, Stacey Dash, that was a shame what happened to her. But I just think it's a perfect movie. Like it's Amy Heckerling with a great script, finding the perfect star at the right time, the right music. We get Paul Rudd never aging, every Donald Faison, Breckin Meyer. It's just filled to the brim with great characters, and they're part of the reason why they're so rich. And I think most people don't know it is because it's based on a great writer like Jane Austen. So the next teen adaptation came out the next year, William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. You may have heard of it. I still think part of this free IP trend starts because they were like, well, the kids are already reading it in school, so they already have an interest. There's already a built-in market, and it's actually really genius. I've always been shocked there was no like Sherlock Holmes IP or something during that time either. It's like, but Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet is, boy, what a movie to capture what it feels like to be 14. It is. I watched it a few months ago, and I still adore this movie, but it is so over the top with emotions, much like the play. But I think Baz Luhrmann's catch is willing to go for this like over the top, the kind of movie trailer opening, again, that style, like it's just, it matches the high caliber of emotions. I think that's one thing I think people forget about Romeo and Juliet. It's a great love story. It's a love story about teenagers. They're like, they're over the top. It's why they make the bad decisions that they do in this movie. But like just watching this trailer, you just start to see how stylish it is. Not to mention, it minted 2 movie stars. It gave us Leonardo DiCaprio, which means without this movie, you don't get Titanic and that big hit. And you get Claire Danes, who's just like goes on to be one of my favorite actors in the 2000s. Like she's just consistently doing great work in television. She always finds unique roles. And to get all these stars, not to mention you get John Leguizamo as Tybalt, just like completely knocking it out of the park. And it's just, I really appreciate that at this period where something was just IP was taken so serious by the people creating it. And I just like, if you're going to do something with IP that's everyone knows, the fact that Baz Luhrmann was like, I'm going to give you exactly what you know, but I'm going to put this crazy spin on it, makes it just like one of the best over-the-top teen movies you can hope for. And so the other one I want to talk about that's also a Shakespeare adaptation and another one of these 90s IP movies is 10 Things I Hate About You. Just a wonderful teen classic. If you're of my age or a few years younger, I think it's got to be one of your favorites. It's loaded with future movie stars. But I think really at the core, I think even though it's a reworking of Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew, it's Julia Stiles here, who just gives another phenomenal teen performance. Like, again, I think that's what really grounds these movies in a way that you don't get as much, as she's really created a fully fleshed out character. And then for her to bounce off of everyone, you give her kind of the more cartoonish characters, but you also get Heath Ledger becoming a movie star in that like moment where he sings the song with the band at her soccer practice. It's like one of the best moments from a teen movie. It's lovely. And while some of the fashion and lines might be dated, I do think Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger really elevate this movie from just a teen movie. But it is so funny to see at the same time this gets made. Same reason why Clueless is a hit. They're just going, as soon as you have a hit, everyone's going to dig into why is it a hit? What can we use? What do we have like it? And like anyone can do Shakespeare. And so, yeah, you have this trend all through the like 90s, this connection of like teen movies and literature. You also get like, I'm not going to go too far into them, but like Ever After, Cruel Intentions, Othello turned into O. It just goes on and on how many. And in fact, they also, at the same time they're making Clueless, they also made a version of Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow. So it was very much in the air. You could see connect the dots between, free source material, easy to write an adaptation. Let's get someone creative, and then hopefully we'll mint some new movie stars. And like, I kind of waiting for a new wave of this. Like this, I think the one thing that's underrated about the 90s teen literary adaptation IP is like, it created a lot of movie stars. And I think that's one of the powers of finding the right actor to be in a teen youth film and then kind of imbuing it with something more makes this one of my favorite little subgenres. So now that I've gone on and on about how many times can I say subgenre, it's time for Who Won Art. And since this week. And so since we're talking about IP, I need to celebrate the new Spider-Man animated movie Across the Spider-Verse. That is, wow, it's just like a visual treat of a movie. It's, I went and saw it with a full audience. Everyone was reacting. They're into it. Kids, teens, adults, we're all buying in. And to me, this is like, well, everything is becoming IP. They once again allowed artists to do a real innovation to it. Like there's like so many different animation styles in it. Trusts its audience to kind of whip back and forth. I mean, the first one, Into the Spider-Verse, is like a really great film that explores this kind of connection and changing of canon, and like it actually starts to dig into deeper things. And like, again, it's still taking this like source thing of like what could feel like pure business and pure money kind of trying to suffocate art, and it really kind of flips it on its head. It's like takes the idea of like, oh, you want to do 1,000 spinoffs, but well, we'll give you 100 we'll give you thousands of Spider-Man. And it does that with such style while also kind of addressing the fact that it's, kind of attacking the own canon that kept things the way it was, and then has all this kind of outlandish style in a way that like, there's sort of a styled animation now. Like there's the Pixar look, and then there's like kind of the Minions look, and that's all we get, where like Spider-Verse was like, no, we're gonna do anime in the middle of this, we're gonna just change our style. And it's really interesting because, like, I think one of the reasons this happens is Spider-Man himself, while a popular character, also is IP that is owned by two separate people. So Spider-Man's obviously a Marvel character, but for years it was owned by Sony. And so Sony would kept producing you had the Tobey Maguire movies, which I think are excellent superhero movies. You have the ones with Andrew Garfield, and then you had them reboot it with Tom Hiddleston and Zendaya. And I think those are a great series. And part of the reason is because Sony had to keep reusing this IP or they lose it. There's that whole thing where, like, at one point Marvel sold off everything because they weren't worth anything, which is crazy to think about now. And so for a while, Spider-Man had to exist outside of Marvel because it was just being run by Sony. And at some point they saw this big thing happening. And so they had to work out this joint venture. And I honestly think the best thing to come out of it are these two animated films. And I'm sure there's a third one coming because the new one ends on a loophole. And to me, like, it ends up being Spider-Man Across the Universe is like a perfect representation of connecting the dots. It's like that art and money and IP and then fighting with each other allowed us to kind of this brilliant alchemy to happen. And we get this really great little film. It's also a huge fucking hit. So if you haven't seen it yet, go see it. And also one more thing, I looked at my notes. I feel like, when the first one came out in 2018, it really introduced the idea of the multiverse in a way that made it understandable. I think the general audiences, people who read comics, who are weirdos into science fiction, have obviously kind of explored this idea. But by putting in an animated movie, people, I think, began to kind of grasp the concept of it, which allowed them to do it in the live action Spider-Man, which I think gets us to former winner of the week, Everything Everywhere All at Once, is able to use this idea of multi-universes and all these different kind of characters. And it was just like, it actually, like, again, IP meshing with art was able to create a new way in, and is now going to allow all kinds of new stories to be told, even if it all kind of stemmed from the fact of, like, we just need more Spider-Man movies. So normally I would wrap up the show, but I'm going to try a new thing now, guys. I wanted to do some recommendations, and I know there's a billion things on all the different streaming devices and channels, and even with the writer's strike going on, there's like a million old things. So I first want to recommend a remake. Again, another art money. I'm not sure who this show was for, but Dead Ringers on Amazon Prime, starring Rachel Weisz, which is a remake of a David Cronenberg horror movie called Dead Ringers. And this show, I'm not sure who the audience was for, but I can't picture that many people were like, I need to see more about Dead Ringers. That being said, this is Rachel Weisz, I can never say her name right, is radiant in this. She's gets to play a dual role. She plays twins. She's absolutely crushes in this role. And the thing I would say most about the show is it's very, very, very darkly funny. It's much like the Cronenberg movie. It has a dark sense of humor. It's not for everybody. There is some graphic things in it, but I think if you're looking for, like, what should I watch? I think this is a little hidden gem, that part of that kind of like giant streaming push. They were just making everything. I think people behind this got in there and were able to make something really unique and different with a point of view you haven't normally seen on television. And it's pretty stylish. And again, it's really, if you have a dark sense of humor like I do, pretty damn funny. So that's right. I recommended a TV show, everyone. The other thing I wanted to do, this is my new thing. My favorite streaming channel is Tubi. Tubi is the true moviegoer's criterion. It's like going to the back of a video store and you're like, oh, I think I remember that poster. It is just like a collection of oddities, and it also happens to have some of the best movies you can watch available for free. Sure, you might have some commercials, but honestly, it allows for so many great movies. Every time I'm like, I'm never going to find this movie. It's on Tubi. So my Tubi recommendation, I could go on all day, and feel free to text or instant message me. I will obviously recommend you something from Tubi, is If Beale Street Could Talk, which is from 2018. It is Barry Jenkins' follow-up to Moonlight, and I just find it to be kind of not forgotten about, kind of not spoken about. It's based on a James Baldwin novel, I believe, not a play. It is one of the best movies of the last 5-6 years that I've seen. It has incredible performances from everyone. The leads are great. Domingo Coleman, who ended up on Euphoria, it's the first time I remember really seeing him just like get a chance to shine. Tiana Paris is great in this. Regina King is wonderful. It's got some of the best cinematography I've ever seen I believe it's a digitally shot movie. It looks gorgeous. And while it can be at times a little emotional and hard to watch, it's really an underrated, stunning film that I think not enough people have seen. And, it's even got internet's favorite Pedro Pascal, one of my man crushes, Dave Franco's in there. It's a movie just filled with wonderful performances and just faces. Brian Tyree Henry in this has like basically one giant monologue, and it just utterly devastates you. And it's just such a beautiful movie. I can't recommend it enough. And it's just sitting there for free on Tubi. So go watch it, enjoy it, and let me know what you think. This is going to be a reoccurring. I'm going to be digging through Tubi and recommending stuff. Not trying to get a Tubi sponsorship, but I'm not going to say no to it either. But thank you so much for watching and listening this week on Connect the Dots. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and I hope you enjoyed it.
I'll see you later, huh?
Wait.
I'll see you later.
I bid you farewell and good luck, morons. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Then in the next episode
Will take place 2 weeks from today.
Hey, that's all. I gotta go.